There are few things in life more exciting than booting up a new game and finding out that not only does it have tons of content in the main quest, but that it's also got a whole bunch of side missions for you to busy yourself with as well. As with all things though, not all of them are winners, and for every exciting adventure that helps to flesh out a game's world, there are a plethora of forgettable ones that see us fetching some meaningless tchotchke or delivering a message for an NPC who doesn't know how the postal service works. But as I say, those were the forgettable ones, whereas there are some side missions that are so dull that they actually end up etched in our memory, forever there to make us hate ourselves because we spent several dozen hours trying to find collectibles just so that we wouldn't feel like things had been left undone. For this list then, we're taking a look at the most boring and time-consuming side quests in video gaming, be they missions to find a ridiculous number of collectibles, or simply bits of content that felt like a massive waste of our time. I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are the 10 most tedious side quests in video gaming. Number 10. Lucky Dice, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. If you're a fan of the Borderlands series and/or tabletop gaming, then you're sure to get tons of enjoyment out of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Like the Assault on Dragon Keep DLC for Borderlands 2, Wonderlands sees Tiny Tina taking on the role of Bunker Master and guiding a party of adventurers on a quest to slay the evil Dragon Lord. It's colourful, over the top, and if you like hoarding loot, it's a dream come true. That is, of course, until you set about trying to find all of the lucky dice. Whenever players come across a 20-sided die, they can roll it in order to try and score some cool loot. The problem is that players start out with terrible luck, so the first few are almost guaranteed to give them a load of rubbish. Surely there must be a way to increase one's luck though, I hear you cry. Well, dear viewer, there is. You just need to find more lucky dice. There are 260 in total, and each will improve the player's chances of getting decent gear by an infinitesimal amount. This means that if you want to have any hopes of obtaining good items or getting the Luck Amok achievement, you'll need to spend hours and hours trudging about trying to find the darn things. Oh great, another natural one. Number 9. The Bard's College, Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim. In the world of Dungeons & Dragons, bards can be an incredibly fun class to play. Depending on how you spec them, they can be fantastic fighters, support characters, or spellcasters. Plus, you've got the added bonus of having charisma out the wazoo and being able to talk your way out of most situations. In Skyrim, however, it turns out that bards are just standard warrior types that occasionally spout a bit of poetry. If players come across a bard while making their way around the vast world, they'll be told that the bard learned everything they know at the Bard's College. Oh, fantastic, you might think to yourself. I'll head right on over there so I can hone my silver tongue and perhaps learn how to channel magic through a lute. Oh, not so fast, young grasshopper, because the Bard's College can teach you nothing of the sort. Anyone embarking on the side quest to join the college will find that it consists of little more than finding a lost poem in a dungeon. Admittedly, it's not a bad dungeon in and of itself, but for those going in and expecting to settle things through the power of song, it's a little disappointing, to say the least. Number 8. Bye Bye Love, Fallout New Vegas. It was a certain Mr. Meatloaf that once said that he would do anything for love, but he won't do that. And we can only assume that the that he was referring to was the tiresome Bye Bye Love side quest in Fallout New Vegas. The quest can be triggered by speaking to Carlitos in the Vault 21 hotel or Joanna in the Gomorrah casino. The two had been romantically involved, but have been separated, and it's up to the player to reunite them. Ah, how nice. The first part of the quest requires ferrying messages back and forth between Carlitos and Joanna, which would be tedious enough on its own, but the fact that the two are separated by multiple loading screens makes the experience downright painful. There are also several sections where the player has to follow Joanna, and to say that she's slow would be an understatement. Plus, each time you enter the casino, your weapons are taken, and you need to re-equip them manually once you get them back. Sure, it's nice to reunite the lovebirds and everything, and you get a decent number of caps for your trouble, but when it comes at the cost of your own sanity, it's probably not worth the hassle. Number 7. Queen of Cards, Final Fantasy VIII. There are many titles out there that incorporate collectible card games into their main gameplay. An example of this done well is of course The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, where players are given a deck of Gwent cards and they can collect more by challenging NPCs to a few rounds. Final Fantasy VIII does something similar with Triple Triad, though the difference between Final Fantasy VIII and The Witcher 3 is that at no point will you find Geralt of Rivia tearing out his ashen tresses because the character he's trying to win a rare card off has vanished into thin air. Yes, I'm talking about the Queen of Cards, an NPC with whom you can play Triple Triad in order to facilitate the collecting of new rare cards. She herself doesn't actually have any rarities, but if you lose certain cards to her, she'll give them to her artist father, who will then create other cards and distribute them to random NPCs. Annoyingly though, regardless of whether you win or lose, she will disappear and then reappear somewhere else in the world. This means that if you're intent on completing your deck, not only do you have to seek out a whole load of different characters, but you also have to trudge about trying to find where the queen of being flipping annoying has gone to next. Jesus, I'm out. Number 6. King Richard Flags, Assassin's Creed. In all honesty, we were spoiled for choice when it came to picking a tedious side quest from the Assassin's Creed series. We could have gone for something like the beer bottle collecting from Syndicate, but at least that quest gave players a sweet belt for their trouble. No, we decided to go with a side quest from the first Assassin's Creed game that will leave players wishing they hadn't bothered. That is, of course, if they had the patience to complete it in the first place. Scattered throughout the map are a whole load of King Richard flags. The first time that Altair finds one, a little pop-up tells the player that there are 99 more to collect. Oh, excellent, players probably thought to themselves. I'll bet there's a really cool prize for finding all 100. Not so, dear viewer. Not so. I suppose Xbox 360 players were admittedly rewarded with the Keeper of the Lion's Passant achievement, which added a whopping 25 points to their gamer score. It's not the best prize for your efforts, but hey, it's something. PlayStation 3 players, on the other hand, received absolutely nothing for completing the quest, as at the time of Assassin's Creed release in 2007, Sony hadn't yet launched the trophy system. Oh, outrageous. Number 5. Trouble with the trolley, eh? Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage. Do you know what's more annoying than a side quest that makes you collect a large number of random items for little to no reason? A side quest that makes you collect a large number of random items for little to no reason and has janky controls. There really is nothing worse. Alright, fine, there are 4 things that we think are worse coming up in this list, but you get what I'm trying to say here. Players exploring Breeze Harbor in 1999's Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage, or Gateway to Glimmer if you want to get European about this, were tasked with collecting 50 gears whilst dashing down a track in a minecart. Sounds straightforward, right? Wrong, because there were all manner of issues with the minigame. Firstly, it was hard as nails for young players at the time. There were a huge number of obstacles thrown in your way from all angles, and failing to avoid them resulted in instant death, meaning the whole thing had to be restarted from scratch. The controls were also kind of wonky, so even reacting in time to the various dangers didn't necessarily mean Spyro would actually avoid them. Perhaps the worst thing about the level, though, was that every time players were killed, they were greeted with the line,
"Trouble with the trolley, eh?"
You can imagine how grating that gets after you've failed the level a dozen times. Number 4. Delicate Flower, Hollow Knight. There are some side quests out there that are tedious because they make you do a pointless thing over and over again for little or no reward. Then there are side quests like the Delicate Flower mission in Hollow Knight, where technically you only have to do one thing, but it's such a pain in the neck that it takes players hours to succeed. The quest can be found by interacting with the Grey Mourner in the resting grounds, and the player is tasked with delivering a flower to the grave of the traitor's child in the Queen's Gardens. The catch, though, is that the two places are basically on opposite sides of the map, and players aren't allowed to warp, use rest benches, or take even a single hit, or they'll have to start all over again. In order to succeed, players need to carefully plan their route and try and stick to areas that have only weak enemies. Even doing this, however, doesn't guarantee success, and it's likely they'll have to attempt the quest multiple times before they finally nail it. Now, we could totally understand all this if the reward at the end was worth having, but all players get for delivering the flower is a mask shard and an achievement. In our opinion, not worth it in the slightest. Number 3. Riddler Trophies, Batman Arkham Asylum. 2009's Batman Arkham Asylum is, without a doubt, one of the finest superhero video games of all time. The story is engaging, the design is flawless, and the combat is incredibly satisfying. It's almost a perfect game, but is let down by just one thing: those blasted Riddler trophies. As though Batman doesn't have enough on his plate, what with the Joker having taken over Arkham Island after escaping custody, the Riddler has also hacked into his communication system and set him about finding a bunch of question mark-shaped doodads. In total, there are 240 Riddler trophies strewn around the island, so players were, quite rightly, expecting a decent reward for all of their trouble. Only, no, the only thing that happens after you find the last trophy is that Batman is able to triangulate the Riddler's location and set the cops on him. You don't even get to see the arrest go down, as it all takes place over the radio. Some might say that the Riddler's capture is a neat little Easter egg, but in our opinion, 240 collectibles is far too high of a price to pay for a few lines of dialogue, no matter how good they are. Number 2. Killing Pigeons, Grand Theft Auto 4. It comes as somewhat of a shock to us that alleged animal rights activists PETA have never raised any objections to the pigeon-killing side quest in GTA 4. After all, they've gone after all kinds of video games in the past, including Pokemon and even Mario for his Tanuki suit, and that isn't a patch on the hundreds of innocent bird lives claimed by Nico Bellic. If players plan on getting Grand Theft Auto 4 to 100% completion, then they're going to have to scour the city for pigeons and put a bullet in every last one they come across. This was problematic for a number of reasons. I mean, firstly, what have pigeons ever done to the devs at Rockstar to earn such a punishment? Don't answer that question, it probably involves feces. Second, pigeons are, by their very nature, small and grey, meaning they blend in rather well with the grit-filled sandbox that is Liberty City. And finally, players have to find and kill 200 of them, which is, quite frankly, ridiculous. But what wonderful reward will I gain for all these avian assassinations, you're probably saying out loud right now. You've got a weird voice, haven't you? Well, admittedly, you do get a cool helicopter and an achievement, but neither one of those things actually feels worth the effort that you'll have to go through to get them. Still, it beats hanging out with Cousin Roman, I suppose. And number 1, collecting Korok seeds, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. We've seen some tedious collectibles on this list, but none have the power to drive players to the brink of insanity quite like the Korok seeds in The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. The items can be found dotted around Breath of the Wild's humongous world, and can, initially at least, be returned to Hestu, who is happy to upgrade Link's weapon, bow, or shield stashes in exchange for the Korok seeds. Getting the full inventory upgrade is taxing enough, as it takes no less than 441 seeds to be able to do it. You'd think the game would only give players as many as they actually needed though, but you'd be wrong, because there are actually 900 scattered across the map. A young man from San Diego named Jesus Arce was the first to complete the mammoth task, and it took him no less than 179 hours. To be clear, that was 179 hours purely hunting Korok seeds and doing nothing else. And what grand prize does the game bequeath upon players who take the time to embark on this ridiculous quest? They get, drumroll please, the gift of friendship. It does absolutely nothing and is even shaped like a little poo. Now yes, that latter detail does mean that this is essentially a self-aware quest about collectathons, but even so, aren't you pleased you spent all that time unlocking this?